DoorDash has a burrito on it right now that costs $12 at the counter of the restaurant it came from. Same beans, same rice, same foil wrap. On the app, that identical burrito rings up closer to $20. Nothing about the food changed. It was cooked in the same kitchen, by the same hands, dropped into the same paper bag. Yet somewhere between that counter and your couch, the price quietly swelled by half. You could drive over and grab it yourself for the smaller number. You know that. But you tap the app anyway, because you are tired, or it is raining, and the difference feels like a small tax on being lazy. But that extra $8 is not one charge. It is a stack of them, hidden inside a single glowing total you barely read before you tap confirm. And here's the curious part. Some of that gap was added before you ever opened the app. That extra $10 didn't come from nowhere, and it wasn't one mysterious charge. Scroll to the bottom of the checkout screen, and it's already broken apart for you, into a little stack of separate lines most people never actually read. The first line is the subtotal. That's just the food, the sum of what you ordered off the menu. It feels like the honest number, the real cost of the meal. Hold on to it, because it's about to have company. Under that sits the delivery fee. A flat charge, plainly labeled, for the act of someone carrying the bag to your door. It looks like the whole cost of delivery. It's really just one piece of it. Then comes the service fee, and this one behaves differently. It isn't a flat number, it's a percentage, quietly scaling up as your order gets bigger. Order more food, and this line grows right along with it. Below that, tax, the one line that's genuinely not the app's doing. And finally, the tip, the amount you choose to add for the driver. 2 more numbers, stacked on the pile, each with its own story. So 5 separate charges, sitting in one total, doing 5 different jobs. Subtotal, delivery fee, service fee, tax, tip. Add them up, and you get that gap. Pull them apart, and the 50% stops being a mystery and starts being a map. But before you ever reach any of those add-ons, something has already happened to the very first line on the receipt. The subtotal, the price of the food itself, before delivery, before service, before tax. Pull up the same burrito on the app and in the restaurant side by side, and here's the quiet surprise. It is not the same number. The in-app menu price is often a few dollars higher, all on its own. That markup is not a fee. It is not labeled anywhere. It is baked straight into the price of the dish, so unless you happen to remember what the taco stand charges in person, you would never know it moved. So the natural question is why? Why would a restaurant raise its prices for the customers who never even walk through the door? Why punish the exact orders it wants more of? The answer is that the restaurant is not really pricing the food. It is pricing around a cost you cannot see on your screen. A cost the platform charges the kitchen for the privilege of being on the app at all. The higher menu price you see is the restaurant quietly reaching into your order to recover money that is about to leave its own pocket. Which means the first number on your receipt is already carrying a passenger. But that quiet markup on the menu isn't the restaurant getting greedy. It's the restaurant reacting to something you never see, a cut the platform takes off the top of every single order before the food even leaves the kitchen. Here's how it works. When your order lands, the platform doesn't just add fees onto your bill. It also reaches back and takes a slice of the restaurant side of the deal. A commission, charged on the value of the order itself. And this cut is not small. Court filings and a lawsuit against the delivery companies laid out the range plainly. Commissions running from about 13.5% all the way up to 40% of an order's value. Sit at the low end for a moment. 13% of every order gone before the restaurant pays for a single tortilla or minute of a cook's time. That's a meaningful bite out of a business already counting pennies. Now walk it up toward the high end, 40%. On a $20 order, that's $8 handed to the platform before the restaurant covers rent, staff, ingredients, and everything else it takes to actually cook the food. So picture the same burrito sold 2 ways. Over the counter, the restaurant keeps every dollar of that sale to work with. Through the app, a chunk of it vanishes the instant the order comes in. Same food, same kitchen, wildly different map. That gap is the pressure quietly reshaping everything, downstream. Because a restaurant can't just wave off a slice that large and pretend the money is still there. The commission forces a decision. And whether it survives that decision depends on how thin its margins already are. You might expect the restaurant to just eat that commission and move on. But to understand why it cannot, you have to see how little a restaurant actually keeps in the first place. It is far less than most people guess. Picture $10 landing in the till from a plate of food. Most of it is already spoken for before anyone counts profit. The ingredients take a slice. The cooks and servers take a bigger one. Rent, gas, electricity, insurance all line up with their hands out. By the time all of them are paid, what stays behind for the restaurant itself is a sliver. Court filings in these delivery disputes put the average restaurant's profit at somewhere between 3 and 9 cents on every dollar of sales. Not 30, not 50, a handful of pennies. Now set that sliver next to the platform's cut. The same lawsuits describe commissions running from around 13.5% all the way up to 40% of the order. Line those two numbers up side by side, and the collision is obvious. A commission of 40% does not shave the restaurant's profit. It swallows it whole and then some. The pennies that were supposed to stay behind are gone, and the plate that made money over the counter now loses money through the app. And here is what that math forces. When a channel costs more than a plate can earn, you cannot simply absorb it and hope. A business running on a few pennies of margin has no cushion to give away, so it has to do something to the numbers before the order ever arrives. So when a cut that large lands on a margin that thin, the restaurant can't simply eat it and smile. Something has to give. And the easiest lever to pull is the one number the customer never sees them touch, the price on the app. Picture the same burrito living in two places at once. In the restaurant, it wears one price. Inside the app, the kitchen quietly gives it a higher one, just enough to claw back the commission the platform is about to skim off the top. It feels sneaky, but follow the math and it's almost forced. If the platform is taking a slice out of every order, the restaurant that keeps its in-app price identical to the counter price is quietly working for the app on those sales. So the menu becomes two menus. Same kitchen, same cook, same foil wrap, but one price list hangs by the register for the person standing there, and a second, taller one lives behind the glass of the phone. And here is what makes it stick. Almost nobody checks. Who walks into the dining room with the app open, comparing line by line? The two prices never sit next to each other, so the higher one simply becomes the price you know. But raising the menu price only covers the platform's cut. It does nothing for the fees the customer is about to see charged directly to them, stacked on top of that already inflated subtotal, in their own separate lines. So the menu price already leans higher on the app, but that inflated subtotal is only the first line on your screen. Below it sit two more charges, and these ones aren't hiding inside the food price at all. They're billed straight to you in the open. The first is the delivery fee. And the name is honest for once. It's the charge nominally tied to the physical act of moving your bag from the counter to your door. A flat dollar amount, give or take, that rises and falls depending on how far away you are. The second charge is stranger. It's called the service fee, and it works differently. It isn't a flat dollar amount at all. It's a percentage, quietly calculated off your subtotal, which means the more you order, the bigger this fee grows, all on its own. So picture two orders. One person grabs a single sandwich. Another feeds a whole table. The flat delivery fee is basically the same for both, since the driver makes the same trip. But that percentage service fee? It swells for the big order, even though the driving is identical. What is that percentage actually paying for? Officially, it covers the platform's own costs. Running the app, processing your payment, customer support, the whole machinery that keeps the system humming. It's the fee for the middleman being there at all. And here's where it gets clever. The delivery fee sounds like it pays the driver. The service fee sounds like it runs the app, but neither one is neatly earmarked for what its name suggests. The platform pools this money and decides where it actually goes. But that delivery fee you just paid doesn't simply become the driver's wage. It flows to the platform first, and then the driver gets paid on a whole separate ledger. So what actually lands in the pocket of the person carrying your food? Their pay isn't one clean number. It's assembled, stitched together from a few different pieces. A base amount for the trip, sometimes a little more for distance, sometimes a bonus when demand spikes, and on top of that, whatever you decide to tip. Now here's what makes that expensive. Moving one bag a few miles ties up an entire person and an entire car for the whole trip. There's no sharing the ride. That driver can't carry your dinner and someone else's at the same time. The meter runs the whole way, waiting at the restaurant while the food is cooked, circling for parking, climbing to a third-floor apartment, then driving back to wait for the next order, all of that time is unpaid unless a trip is actually attached to it. So the platform faces a real puzzle. It has to pay enough to keep drivers willing to log on, especially at dinner rush. But every dollar it hands a driver is a dollar it hasn't kept for itself. Labor is the single most stubborn cost in the whole chain, which is exactly why the tip matters so much. It's the one piece of the driver's pay that comes straight from you, not from the platform's own budget. And that quiet distinction turned out to be the center of a very real problem. That patchwork of driver pay has one piece we haven't touched yet, and it's the one you'd swear is the most straightforward of all. The tip, the line you add yourself, the amount you choose, the extra you hand the person who carried your food up the stairs. You assume it works the way it does at a restaurant table. You add $5, the driver gets $5 on top of whatever the platform was already paying them. A bonus for good service. Clean and simple. For a stretch, on some platforms that isn't quite how it flowed. The tip you added didn't always stack on top of the driver's pay. Sometimes it slid underneath it, quietly filling in money the platform would have paid anyway. Here's the mechanism. Say the platform guaranteed a driver a set amount for a trip. Your tip counted toward that guarantee instead of adding to it. So a bigger tip could mean the platform simply paid less. The driver's total barely moved, which flips the whole thing on its head. You tipped believing you were rewarding the driver. In some cases, you were subsidizing the platform. And the strange part is that drivers themselves struggled to see it because for a while, they couldn't view the full tip before accepting an order. That practice didn't stay hidden. In 2025, DoorDash agreed to pay around $17 million to settle claims that it had misled both customers and delivery workers over how tips were handled, docking tips from driver pay rather than passing them straight through. So if the fees pile up this fast, why does anyone keep ordering? Because the app has a clever answer waiting. Pay one flat monthly amount, and the delivery fee simply disappears from every checkout screen. And that word, free, does something strange to how you order. Once the fee is gone, the friction is gone with it. You stop hesitating over a single burrito on a slow evening. You order more often and for smaller amounts. That shift is the whole point. A membership isn't a discount. The platform hands you out of kindness. It's a lever. Waive one visible fee, and you order enough extra times to more than cover what that fee was ever worth. But the delivery fee was never the only charge on that receipt. Waiving it doesn't touch the marked up menu price, or the service fee that scales with your order, or the platform's cut from the restaurant. Those all quietly ride along, membership or not. So free delivery is real. In the narrowest sense, that one line really does vanish. It just makes you a heavier user of a system that earns from every other line on the page. The fee didn't leave. Your habit changed to feed it. And once you notice that even free delivery is quietly baked into the numbers, you start to wonder who sits at the center of all this, collecting from every direction. Follow the money out of your order, and it all flows to the same place. In the United States, one platform sits above the rest. DoorDash holds more than half the food delivery market, around 56% by most accounts, which means when you open an app to order dinner, the odds say it's this one. That dominance turns into real money. In its own annual filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission for fiscal year 2025, DoorDash reported total revenue of about $13.7 billion. Billions, moving through the middle of countless small orders. Here's what makes that number so clever. The platform doesn't earn from one side of your dinner. It earns from both. The restaurant pays it to be listed and delivered. You pay it to have the food arrive. So a single burrito generates money in two directions at once. The commission carved off the restaurant's side. The fees layered onto yours. Two revenue streams from one bag of food that the platform itself never cooked. Multiply that across millions of orders a day, and the middle position becomes the whole business. It doesn't own the kitchen. It doesn't own the road. It owns the space in between, and it charges rent on both ends. When a company earns from both ends of every order that quietly, someone eventually asks how clearly it is telling you the price. And customers were not the only ones asking. Regulators and lawyers started reading those checkout screens line by line. The core complaint was simple. If some of these fees were never really disclosed, or were framed to look like they paid for one thing while covering another, then the price you agreed to was not the price you thought you were agreeing to. That is where the tip became the flashpoint. Drivers and consumers argue the money meant to go straight to the person carrying your food was instead being used to fill in the driver's base pay, so a bigger tip did not always mean bigger take-home. In 2025, DoorDash agreed to pay around $17 million to settle claims it had misled both customers and delivery workers over exactly that practice, tips being docked from what drivers were owed rather than added on top. Separately, class action complaints pushed on the pricing itself, pointing out that the commission squeezing restaurants and the fees layered onto customers made delivery meals cost far more than either side quite realized at the moment they ordered. The pressure changed what you actually see. Fees that once sat buried now get broken out and named before you pay. The total did not necessarily shrink, but the machinery, the parts we have been unpacking, is finally printed on the screen in front of you. So the fees got dragged into the open, the lawsuits piled up, the settlements were paid, and yet none of it made the arrangement collapse. Which raises the obvious question, if everyone grumbles about the markup, why does it keep working? Start with you. On a rainy night, sick, or buried in work, the choice was never the app price versus the counter price. It was hot food at your door versus getting up, driving, waiting, and driving home. Measured against your own time, the markup feels small. Now the restaurant. That commission we walked through hurts on every order. But most delivery orders are ones the kitchen would never have gotten otherwise, from someone who was never going to walk in. A thinner slice of a customer you didn't have still beats no customer at all. And the platform sits in the middle, taking from both ends. A cut from the restaurant on one side, fees from the customer on the other. It never cooks, never drives the whole way, never owns a kitchen. It runs the connection, and it charges everyone who crosses it. That is the quiet genius of the whole setup. Nobody in it gets everything they want, but everybody gets just enough. The customer saves an evening, the restaurant gains an order it wouldn't have had, and the platform earns from every handoff. Uneasy, imperfect, and remarkably stable. So if everyone in this arrangement gets just enough to keep playing, then that 50% gap starts to look like something other than a trick. It is not a hidden surcharge for nothing. It is a receipt for work. Every line on that screen is paying a real person or a real cost. The marked up menu covers the restaurant's cut to the platform. The service fee feeds the software sitting between everyone. The delivery fee and the tip move a warm bag across town in a car that costs money to drive. And here's the curious part. Nothing on that receipt is truly invisible anymore. Once you know what each layer is really buying, the gap stops feeling like a mystery. You are not being fooled. You are watching the actual price of not driving to get your own dinner. The $20 burrito was never the same burrito. It came with a car, a driver, a menu quietly rewritten, and a company earning from both ends of the trip. That is not a scam. That is just what a hot meal at your door cost, when you add up every hand that touched it. So what is the everyday price or rule you have always quietly wondered about? A number on a menu, an object in your cabinet, a fee you have never questioned. Drop it in the comments and subscribe so the next answer finds its way to you, because there is always a reason why.